Good morning, church. Today is the last Sabbath of the year. We thank God for His protection. We will be entering the new year in a few days. We do not know what the year is holding for us. We have to keep on reading our Bibles, spreading the word, and praying for each other. Today's sermon is entitled, Jesus Protects His Own. Let's open our Bibles on Mark 6, verse 45 to 52. Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. Now, when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on land. Then he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now, about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and would have passed them by. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost, and cried out. For they all saw him and were troubled. But immediately he talked with them and said to them, Be of good cheer, it is I, don't be afraid. Then he went up to the boat to them, and the wind ceased. And they were greatly amazed in themselves beyond measure, and marveled. For they had not understood about the loaves, because their heart was hardened. After feeding the multitude, Jesus made his disciples to get into the boat and go to Bethsaida. King James Version used the word constrained. He constrained his disciples to get in the boat. Why would Jesus force his disciples? So, because the word constrained means forced. So why would Jesus force his disciples to get in the boat? He had just finished a miracle, and all of a sudden he's forcing them to get into the boat. Why would he do that? After feeding the multitude, the crowd were thinking of making Jesus an earthly king. The disciples were very weak and susceptible to the passion and zeal of the crowd. And Jesus knew about that. So he made his disciples to get away. He had to let them to go away. When we go to Mark 6, verse 52, he says, For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. The miracle of the loaves did not touch the disciples. It did not convince them that Jesus was the Son of God. The disciples had the same problem, just like us. God has performed many miracles in our lives, but we are failing to believe fully in Him. We have little faith, despite many miracles that God has performed in our lives. Jesus went to the mountain to pray alone. This is a man who has just performed a miracle that hasn't happened in life, that he fed many people with a few loaves and 2 fishes. Now, after performing such a big miracle, he's going out to pray alone. What was he praying for? Jesus is the high priest. He intercedes for his people. So Jesus went to the mountain to pray for his disciples, to pray for their faith and their strength. And he also prayed that God should reveal to the disciples who he was, because the disciples didn't know who Jesus was. So he went out to pray to God that the disciples would know that he is the Son of God. In the evening, the boat was in the sea, and Jesus was alone on the land. The wind came and tossed the boat. It was strong and against them. The disciples had a problem. They were alone in the sea, and he was on the land. They had experienced the storm before. At that time, they were with Jesus in the boat, and he rebuked the wind and the storm, and the waves stopped. But this time, they are alone in the boat. They are scared. They don't know who's going to help them because Jesus is away. Unknown to the disciples was, Jesus was away from them, but he was praying for them. He was praying for their protection. If they knew that Jesus was praying for their protection, I do not think that they were going to be scared or to be worried, but they were not aware of that. Many times in our lives, we go through difficulties, and when we are in difficulties, we feel that we are alone. We feel that Jesus is far away from us. But let me assure you today, Jesus is never far away from us. He is in heaven, and he is interceding for our protection. Then he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now, by the fourth watch of the night, he came to them. When we are looking, we see that the disciples, we saw the boat on the middle of the sea in the evening. Now it was the fourth watch of the day, or the night. So the fourth watch of the night was between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So what it means is the disciples have been struggling with the wind from evening up to the morning. That was a long struggle. They should have been very exhausted. It was dark, but he precisely knew where the disciples were, and he came to them. Does this mean anything to you? That Jesus was on the land, very dark, and he knew exactly where the disciples were. Jesus sees his own. If you belong to Jesus, he sees you. He sees his own. So he'll come to you at the hour of desperation to save you. When the disciples saw Jesus walking on water, they were very scared. They thought it was a ghost. It was a spirit. During that time, there was a widespread belief that the spirit of the water brings destruction. This is why the disciples were scared, were shouting and screaming, because they were scared of being destroyed by the spirit of the water. But Jesus saw that the disciples were so scared. What did he do? Did he try to frighten them again? No. He said, "Don't be afraid. It's I." The word is I. It means that he is God. Each time this word is used by God. It's I. Don't be scared. So, in other words, Jesus revealed to them that he was God on this day, because he used the word, it's I. Don't be afraid. If the storms in your life arises, don't be afraid, because Jesus is interceding for you, for your protection, and for your rescue. He is the protector of his people. Saving you is the evidence that he is God. Many times God has saved us, and each time God is saving you is an evidence that he is God. But at times we forget that. Let us be like David in Psalms 23 verse 4. He says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they will comfort me. The lesson here is, if you belong to Jesus, you do not need to fear. No matter how terrifying the circumstances are, you are in the place of obedience. You need not worry. Jesus will be a present help at the time of need. The disciples were at a place Jesus instructed them to be. When you read down with Mark, he doesn't mention Peter. He left out the story about Peter. Why would Mark leave that important incident of Peter walking on the sea? We don't have the answer. We don't know the answer. But one of the preachers said, Mark's gospel was influenced by Peter. And during that time when Mark was writing the gospel, Peter didn't want us to focus on him walking on the sea, but he wanted people to focus on God. Therefore, the Holy Spirit allowed Peter to influence Mark to leave the incident of Peter in his story. Now let's go to Matthew so that we can hear the full story. Let's open our Bibles to Matthew 14, verse 28 to 33. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, Come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, Oh, you of little faith, why do you doubt? And when he got onto the boat, the wind ceased. And those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, Truly you are the Son of God. So you can see that the feeding of the loaves, the feeding of the crowd, the multiplying of the food, the creation of the food, did not play a part. But this incident changed the disciples. This incident convinced them that Jesus was the Son of God. Peter said, Command me to come to you. Why would Peter say that? We know Peter was a fisherman. He had a lot of experience with water. We too, we play with water. And we know that if you put your foot on water, it sinks right to the bottom of the sea. That's where it goes. But now here's a guy who says, Please command me to come to you on water. Peter knew that he was safe with Jesus on the water than without Jesus far away in the boat. So he knew that when he was with Jesus, he had protection. So he had to take that risk of sinking to go to Jesus because he knew that there was life, there was protection to him. The same applies as today. We have to know that when we are with Jesus, we've got no more protection. It's safer to be with Jesus than to be with anyone else. The phrase, command me, it shows that Peter was submissive to Jesus. He submitted to Jesus. He said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Brothers and sisters, if we submit ourselves to Jesus, he saves us. He performs miracles in our lives that we have never experienced. Here is an evidence. Peter submitted himself to Jesus, and he walked on water. No one in the history of humankind has ever walked in the water, except Jesus and Peter. There is something interesting about Peter. We understand his faith, we understand his fear, we understand his doubts. By stepping out of the boat, Peter demonstrated his faith to Jesus. He believed that Jesus was the only one who can help him. But his faith was not pure. It was mingled with natural doubt that many of us have got when we are going through difficulties. Many believers, when they are struggling in their lives, at times they lose faith, just like Peter. But the good thing is, Peter didn't just lose faith. He quickly regained his faith and called for help from Jesus. So when you're looking at this verse, many people would think that Peter was a failure. Peter didn't fail. Peter didn't sink. Peter was sinking, so he didn't sink. And God came to help him. Peter had many options at this incident. Let's look at the first option. Peter was a fisherman, was used to the water. He could have just swam while he was swimming, calling for Jesus. Okay? That's one option that he had, Peter. Peter had another option again. He had an option of crying, of asking for help from his fellow disciples. They could have easily thrown a rope to him and pulled him out of the water. But he didn't look at those options. He looked at Jesus and asked for help from Jesus because he knew that he had higher chances of surviving if he had called to Jesus. So we have higher chances of surviving ourselves if we call to Jesus. When we are faced with difficulties in life, we have got many options that we can use to come out of our problems. But I would suggest that, encourage you that, don't choose any other option. Choose Jesus as the option because you have got 100% guarantee that he is going to help you and protect you and save you. Today in this church, right now, there are people who have been struggling with the devil throughout the year. They are exhausted. They are losing hope. But I'm very happy because they came to church today. They came to hear the word. They came to hear you sing the songs of hope. They came to hear the word of God so that they can get enough faith to ask the Lord to save them, just like what Peter did, because they know that Jesus protects his own. May God bless his word.